Most people are familiar with the Western celebration of Halloween, characteristic for its association with spooky and scary imagery. Observed on the 31st of October, people often watch scary movies, decorate their houses with all kinds of dark-inspired visuals. Children customarily put on costumes, going from house to house, asking for candy, and everyone seems all in all to enjoy a kind of strange celebration of the supernatural. To many non-Western people, this holiday might seem rather odd. I mean, how did modern-day America and Europe just suddenly start celebrating a day dedicated to themes surrounding death and scary imagery? Now, the story is a bit more complex than that. Westerners did not just start dressing up as vampires and beg for candy out of nowhere. So what's the story here? How did it begin? Now, I'm a Muslim, okay? Personally, I don't celebrate Halloween, but despite that, I do actually find the history behind Halloween to be quite fascinating in its own right. So, here's a quick summary. The origins of Halloween can actually be found in pre-Christian pagan celebrations. Historically, Halloween originated with the pagan celebration of Samhain, amongst the Celtic people of Ireland. Celebrated on the 1st of November, Samhain was believed to be the start of the new year and the beginning of the winter period. According to common belief, on the evening of Samhain, the boundary between the dead and living worlds would be blended, spirits would walk the earth and even return to their homes. People therefore used to wear masks and other disguises in order to avoid being recognized by all the evil spirits walking around, which is possibly where the whole scary costume tradition might find its origins. That is not the end of the story, however. Many people have also heard that Halloween has a significance in Christianity as well, so where does the whole Christian connection come in? Well, this brings us to the All Hallows Eve, the celebration from which Halloween derives its name. The All Hallows Eve, or All Saints' Day, is a Christian celebration to commemorate all Christian saints believed to have gone directly to heaven after their death. The All Hallows Night, commemorated in Christianity, was originally on May the 13th. However, in the 8th century, Pope Gregory III moved the celebration from May the 13th to November the 1st, the day of the pagan Samhain celebration. Why? Well, perhaps in order to supplant the pagan holiday with a Christian celebration. Later, these traditions, particularly due to the influence of Irish immigrants, would merge together in America, giving us the modern-day secular Halloween celebration. Although originating in paganism and later taken over by Christianity, today, Halloween is observed largely as a non-religious secular celebration, being effectively spread throughout the world largely thanks to American movies and television. Just to illustrate that point, let me take myself as an example. I am from Norway. When I was a child, we never celebrated Halloween, yet somehow I was still exposed to it. How? Well, because I watched the famous Charlie Brown Halloween special on Norwegian children's TV. What you're about to witness is globalized Americanization in action. Here you see the kids doing their Halloween trick-or-treating. Even though we never celebrated Halloween when I was a child, we were still exposed to it due to shows like this. I watched this when I was 4 years old and I vividly remember it to this day. And it definitely left its mark. Like Charlie Brown's iconic line, "I got a rock," is a quote that, to this very day, I constantly reference whenever I'm playing Settlers of Catan. Stein. Speaking of trick-or-treating, this phenomenon is arguably one of the most iconic aspects of Halloween. Children going from house to house and begging for candy. Now, where on earth does this particular tradition emerge? Well, based on my sources, it seems to be connected with a practice on the All Hallows Night in which children and poor adults could go to local homes and receive food in exchange for prayers for the dead. When Halloween eventually became a secular holiday, the prayers would be replaced by threatening to commit tricks on the house if they did not receive a treat in return, and hence the saying trick or treat. Now, some of you might be wondering, why on earth am I discussing all of this? Well, because it actually serves as a great introduction in order to understand the topic of today's video. You see, America is not the only place that historically developed its own trick-or-treating tradition. Given Halloween's non-Christian influences, it would not be surprising to find that other previously pagan people groups who later converted to Christianity would celebrate something similar. The practice of people wearing masks, going from house to house and beg for food is actually a phenomenon known all over Europe. In fact, in my country, Norway, we have a very similar trick-or-treat-like tradition, which used to be commemorated annually, although in the modern-day world it has either been completely abandoned or morphed into something completely different. This Norwegian tradition was similar to the modern Halloween trick-or-treat phenomenon, in that Norwegians would go from house to house and beg for food. However, there were some very striking differences between them. First major difference. This Norwegian tradition was celebrated not on the All Hallows Night, known as Allehelgensnatt in Norwegian, but was instead celebrated surrounding the holiday of Christmas. Second major difference. Unlike today, this tradition was not enacted by children, but instead was largely done by Norwegian male adults, although women and children could in some cases join. And the third major difference, instead of people looking like this, people used to look like this. Yeah, let me introduce you to the julebukk, or the Christmas buck. Arguably, one of the scariest Christmas traditions that has ever existed. Many of you are probably asking right now, what on earth is this madness? What kind of crazy tradition are we talking about here? Why is there a creepy goat's head on a stick? What is going on here? Norwegians, what is wrong with you? Well, let me try to give you the simple explanation. The julebukk tradition basically worked like this. A bunch of adults would gather together, putting on ugly and scary costumes made from animal skins or wood. In front of the whole procession, one individual would go covered by a cloth and carry a big, crude, homemade goat's head on a stick, hence the name Christmas buck. Buck being a male goat. They would then walk from farm to farm, creating lots of noise, blowing in goat horns, and perhaps do tricks on the farmstead. Then they would go into people's houses, singing songs, speaking with distorted voices, and scaring the children. People were supposed to show the julebukk hospitality and provide them with beverages and or something to eat. Those who did not give the julebukk food or drink could expect bad events to occur in the coming year. Now, many of you are probably wondering how such a seemingly strange tradition could emerge. Well, there is obviously a bigger historical context at play here, a context that is a bit more complex, larger than you think, and has multiple layers to it. But based on my research, there seems to be at least two primary themes to consider here, so let's tackle them one by one. Firstly, it is important to remember that Christmas does not originate as a Christian holiday. Let me repeat. Christmas does not originate as a Christian holiday. Christmas, as we know it today, similar to Halloween, actually originates as a pagan holiday, celebrated both in Roman and Germanic societies, although known under different names. In Germanic regions, this celebration was known as Julblot or Jul, a pagan word that is literally older than Christianity itself. Fun fact, we still use this word in modern Nordic languages when referring to Christmas. The old terminology still stays strong. During this festival, pagans would do cultic practices like animal sacrifices and drinking to the honor of the gods. There seems to be some disagreement about the exact meaning of the Yule celebration. Some claim that Yule was a celebration in honor of the sun's return, while others see it more as a fertility celebration. But yes, it was definitely celebrated before the coming of Christianity. Similarly, in the Roman Empire, pagans used to celebrate a festival called Saturnalia that could last from the 17th of December until the 23rd of December in commemoration of the Roman god Saturn. So, how then, you might ask, did the whole Christian connection come into play? If originally a pagan celebration, how did Christmas become a Christian celebration? Does the Bible ever claim that Jesus, peace be upon him, was born around this time? Well, the Bible never actually mentions that Jesus, peace be upon him, was born on the 25th of December. In fact, the Bible does not give a date or even just a general time period of the year when his birth supposedly happened. The Bible only provides a completely falsified historical narrative about some universal Roman census being declared under Emperor Augustus, something only mentioned in the Gospel of Luke and is not attested to in contemporary non-biblical sources. The Bible also claims that Quirinius was the governor of Syria at the time, which again is also false because he did not become governor until like 6 years later. So yeah, the Bible provides some falsified historical claims, but no date for the actual birth, no general time period, nothing. Then where does the Christian connection come into play here? Well, you see, together with Saturnalia, pagan Romans also celebrated the birthday of the god Sol Invictus, a sun god in the Roman pantheon. And when was Sol Invictus's birthday said to be, according to these pagan Romans? The birthday of Sol Invictus was said to be on the 25th of December. Incidentally, the exact same date later Christians claimed that Jesus, peace be upon him, was born. The Christian Christmas festival, eventually celebrated surrounding the time of Saturnalia, was not actually established until the 4th century, meaning 300 years after the birth of Jesus, peace be upon him, when it was moved to the festival day of Sol Invictus. Before that, Christians used to celebrate the birth of Jesus, peace be upon him, during the early spring and closer to the time of Easter. So yeah, next time you meet a Christian celebrating Christmas, you should remind them that they are actually participating in a day dedicated to the honor of pagan gods. But anyway, let's get back to the topic. Now, some of you might be saying, okay, I get it. Paganism influenced the modern Christmas celebration, but what does that have to do with all these crazy Norwegian goat sticks? Well, given its pagan origins, it will not be surprising to find multiple pagan elements preserved within the Christian Christmas celebration. And this goes for the Norwegian julebok tradition as well. One theory has in fact connected the julebok tradition to the Nordic mythological creature known as julegeita, or the Christmas goat. A mysterious goat said to live up in the mountains, slowly coming down closer to family homesteads and punish disobedient children during the midwinter season. However, this goat is also said to reward kind and obedient children with gifts. Interestingly, before Santa Claus became truly popular in Norway and Sweden, the primary gift giver was in fact the Christmas goat and not some bearded man. In Norway, many people would say that the Christmas gifts came from the Christmas goat. And in Sweden, people used to dress up as goats and give gifts to children. Believe it or not, but the Finnish name for Santa Claus, joulupukki, literally translates as Christmas goat. There is a very interesting book on the topic, available on the Norwegian National Library website and written by Norwegian folklorist Lilly Weiser Aall. Yes, Aall, not Aal. When you have two A's in Norwegian and Danish, it makes an A sound, which is why this football player is named Haaland, not Haaland, and why this philosopher is named Søren Kierkegaard, not Søren Kierkegaard, but that's a different issue. Lilly Aall writes that Santa Claus as a Christmas character did not really become widespread in Norway until after 1900, in some places even as late as post-World War II. In fact, in certain areas, Christian Norwegians were so against this newly introduced practice of Santa Claus that they even referred to it as a form of paganism. Side note here. To me, this is just such an interesting case of how quickly cultures can change at times. I mean, Norwegian Christians claiming Santa Claus to be a paganistic degradation of their Christian culture? Seriously, could you even imagine a modern-day Christian in Norway or other European countries ever claim such a thing? Today, that person would be labeled as an extremist evangelical Christian nationalist or something like that. Anyway, as Lilly Aall notes, multiple places in Norway had traditions surrounding the Christmas goat before the idea of Santa Claus was popularized. Now, what does the Christmas goat have to do with paganism and julebukk? You see, the Christmas goat has been interpreted as a fertility spirit or god that was used to encourage fertility of farmland. And so the Christmas goat is not just a mythological creature, it is also a kind of fertility spirit. And so one theory states that the Norwegian julebukk tradition is actually a celebration of the fertile powers of nature, and thus a remnant of a pagan past. Interestingly, in some Norwegian regions, the julebukk used to carry a hammer with him, similar to the Old Norse god Thor and his hammer Mjolnir. In the Norwegian region of Rolag, the julebukk used to do a dance, but would then suddenly play dead in the middle of the dance, only to rise back up and continue. This seems reminiscent of the two goats of Thor that die but are later resurrected when Thor swings his hammer over them. To this day, goats are still widely used as Christmas decoration in Scandinavia. I mean, in Sweden, it gets even crazier. There, they literally build giant versions of them that always seem to burn down for some strange reason. So yes, to summarize, one theory states that the julebukk tradition arises from pre-Christian pagan influences, and the theory has connected the practice to julegeita, the fertility spirit and mythological creature. Another explanation emphasizes the trickster-related aspects of the julebukk. As I said, people going julebukk could also play tricks on the farmstead, causing damage to private property, letting cattle loose from their enclosures, and it's even reported that they could pull boats up on the roofs of boathouses. Such acts might seem like bullying for us today. However, looking at it from the perspective of their contemporary times, the picture actually becomes a bit more nuanced. I am obviously not attempting to justify like damage to private property and all that, but That being said, Lily All argues that these acts were enacted due to a sense of fairness and fighting injustice in the local community, the kind of injustices not covered by church or official law codes. Certain acts, although they are not prosecuted by official authorities, are still seen as violating local custom and hurt the community's public conscience. For example, people who broke with local moral norms, like fishing in waters that did not belong to them, could have tricks committed on them by a local julebukk as a kind of unofficial enactment of justice. Now, that might give some explanation as to the origins of the julebukk, but what about all the scary imagery and the crazy looking goat sticks? Where does that come into play? Well, that leads me to my second major theme: the concept of associating Christmas with scary supernatural imagery. This concept is not at all unusual. Associating Christmas with scary imagery is a phenomenon found in multiple different cultures across Europe. Many people are familiar with the character of Krampus in German-speaking regions, the monstrous figure said to accompany Saint Nicholas and punishing disobedient children by snatching them off in his bag and carry them away. Another example is Iceland, where you find the myth of the jólakötturinn, or the Christmas cat. Yes, you heard me right, a Christmas cat. Oh, but this cat was not some tiny cutesy-mootsy cuddly kitten. No. This cat was a giant bloodthirsty child-slaughtering monster, going from household to household and eating disobedient children during the Christmas season. The Christmas cat was also said to be owned by Grýla, the terrifying troll woman living in the Icelandic mountains. This also goes for the Faroese Islands, where you also find the troll woman Grýla. Incidentally, the Faroese Islands also has a dressing up tradition relating to Christmas, where both children and adults would dress up, scare people, and collect food. In Wales, you have the tradition of Marie Levide. Here, a man would carry the skull of a horse on a stick and cover himself with cloth. People would then follow him, going in a procession, walking from house to house, sing songs for people, and ask to come into their homes. So yeah, when studying the julebukk phenomenon, one should have this in mind. It is not uncommon to associate Christmas with scary supernatural elements. Some regions in Norway would in fact use the julebukk as a method of scaring children, encourage good behavior, and make children master their fear. Parents would claim that if children did not behave nicely, the Christmas goat would come and take them. Now, all this begs the question, how is the julebukk tradition expressed in modern Norway today? Are the scary goat heads still around? No. In fact, strangely enough, despite calling it julebukk, again meaning a Christmas male goat, today the whole goat imagery has simply disappeared altogether. Going julebukk has instead taken on a child-friendly character, with people dressing up with more innocent-looking costumes, going from house to house, singing songs, and receive candy. However, although we can never know for sure what the future will hold, it would seem that the julebukk tradition in Norway might be slowly dying off. Lily All wrote already back in 1953 how the tradition was in decline and in some places had disappeared altogether. At least according to one survey from 2017, only 14% of Norwegians said that they would go julebukk that year. So, is this tradition yet another victim of Americanized globalization? I don't know. But in any regard, Even if you don't celebrate Christmas, I think a lot of people would agree that these scary Christmas traditions really are fascinating historical phenomena. And perhaps they really can point towards something more universally human within us. We humans, we love the scary and the supernatural, and it is very interesting to see all the strange different manifestations that this obsession can take. Anyway, that is all I have for you today. For the record, all my facts here are from academically valid sources that are authenticated by experts. I'm not basing this on Wikipedia. You can trust my facts here. But anyway, thank you for watching.